Okay, so okay, so share, present now. Can you all see what I'm sharing there? Kila mtu. Tuko pamoja? Okay, sawa sawa. So tuendelee.
Tuko pamoja, yes. Yes sir, tuko pamoja.
Okay, sawa sawa. So to correct for these errors, all the errors, be they errors affecting the child balance or errors not affecting the child balance, kindly mute. So to correct for these errors, be it errors affecting the child balance or errors not affecting the child balance, the first step is to post into the journal. So then we shall have our journal here. So hopefully you can all see. So the journal, has various columns. We have the date column, the particulars, we have the debit column, and we have the credit column. So we have the first error. The first error, that is number 1. Receipts from debtors of how much? Of 5,000 shillings had been debited to accounts receivable accounts and credited to cash account. We can all see that there's a problem here, isn't it? What should have been done for this transaction? What should have been done for this transaction? Someone? Someone in this meeting? Number 1, receipts from debtors. Receipts from debtors of 5,000 shillings had been debited to accounts receivable account and credited to cash account. There is something wrong with that entry. So as per the rules of double entry, when we receive money from debtors, we're supposed to debit cash account and credit bank account. So, sorry, we're supposed to debit cash account and credit the debtors account. But now in our case here, and what has been done here is that instead of debiting cash and crediting debtors account, the accountant in this case debited debtors account, credited cash, which was wrong. He did the opposite. Yeah. So this is the error of reversal of entries. So instead of debiting cash with the increase in cash, he credited. And instead of crediting debtors with a decrease in debtors, he debited debtors, which was very wrong. So this is an error of reversal of entries. It does not affect the balancing of the trial balance. So to correct for this, we reverse the error. That is debit what was wrongly credited and credit was what was wrongly debited. And then after doing that, we post the correct entry. So this is a two-step approach. So we reverse the incorrect credit and debit, and then we post the correct debit and credit. So as follows. That is the first transaction. Supposed to have debited, okay, the incorrect entry was by debiting accounts receivable and crediting cash account. So we reverse that. So to reverse the debit in the accounts receivable, we credit the accounts receivable. So in the journal, we credit accounts receivable. The amount is 5,000. And then debit cash account. And then debit cash account 5,000. So and then we put the narration being correction of error of reversal of entry. So this error does not affect the trial balance, so no suspense account will be involved. So no suspense account will be involved in this case. So and then we move on to the next error. That is number 2. The next error, number 2, a payment of 315 shillings to a creditor has not been posted from the cash book to the purchases ledger. A payment of 315 shillings made to a creditor has not been posted from the cash. Oh, sorry. I've forgotten to post the original amount. So still on number 1, after reversing the incorrect debit and credit, we post the correct entry. We should have been still on number 1. We should have been debiting the cash account with 5,000 and crediting the accounts receivable account. Sorry about that. So cash account, debit again, and credit accounts receivable. Then we key in the narration being being the correct entry, being correct entry from reversal of entries. And then you close that and move on to the second error. That is number 2. That is a payment of 315 made to a creditor had not been posted from the cash book to into the purchases ledger. So we are told that there was a problem in the purchases ledger, an omission from the purchases ledger, but we are not told about we are told that the cash book is okay. So the entry in the cash book is okay, The only problem in this case is in the purchases ledger. The purchases ledger has not been debited. So,
Excuse me, sir.
yes,
I can't get the difference between the first entry and the second entry. Sijaelewa kenye umefanya.
ujaelewa. Kuna mtu hapo anaweza nisaidia? Anyway, okay, what I've done, you see, the first, this is from the first error, that is the receipt from debtors of 5,000 being debited. Okay, the correct entry for this transaction should have been debiting cash account and crediting debtors. Tuko pamoja hapo?
Yes.
So receipts from debtors should be debited in cash, credited in the debtors account. But the problem, the mistake that was done here is that instead of debiting debtors, he credited. Instead of debiting cash, he debited. Sorry, instead of debiting cash, he credited cash. And instead of crediting debtors, he debited debtors. So, which was like, what can I say? It's like maybe take an example of now how can I explain this? Assuming you have a container, yeah. Assuming you have a container that already has 2 liters of water. Sawa, tuko pamoja?
Yes.
Assuming you have a container that has 2 liters of water, and then you are told, now you're in a math class, you are told add 2 liters, add another 2 liters of water in this container. Then you are told to give the answer of how much liters that this container has. It should be how much? That is 2 plus 2, sindio?
Yes. 4.
2 plus 2, which will give you 4. Now assuming now you made a mistake, instead of adding the 2 in your case in an exam, you said 2 minus 2, which would give you how much?
0.
Which would give you 0. So which is wrong, sindio? Then you discover that this was an error. So how do you correct for this?
You change your sign to positive.
Yeah? You would
Subtracting
add 2. You would do what?
instead of subtracting, you add.
You add, sindio? How much would you add?
4
You would add 4.
to the 0,
2.
or
So that you end up, yeah? How much would you add? You would add 4, sindio? You put the correct answer, which is 4 liters in that container, sindio?
yes.
Yeah, so what I've done is that instead of adding 4, because I had some issues with that last week, I've done it in 2 steps. First, to reverse the initial error. So to revert to the original position before adding the water, the 2 liters. And then now add what should have been added. Now you post the correct entry. So the same case applies in this error. So instead of crediting, he debited, which took us back. So you need to revert to the original position before the error was made, and then post the correct amount that should have been posted. So instead of doing it, so in my case here, I've done it in 2 steps instead of adding the double amount. Sawa.
Yes.
Okay. So we proceed to the next error. Proceed to the next error. The next error, that is on number 2, a payment of 315 made to a creditor had not been posted from the cash book to the ledger. So the problem here is that, so when a payment is made to a creditor, the correct entry should be you debit the creditor's account and then you credit cash. So you credit cash with a decrease in cash account, you debit debtor with a decrease in the liability, which is a creditor. So in this case, the problem is that the entry was not posted in the purchases account. So you're not told about the creditor's account. So we assume that the creditor's account is correct. So the only problem here is in the purchases account. So this transaction was not entered in the purchases account. And since no mention has been made on how the entry was made in the creditor's account, we assume that the creditor's account is okay. It was debited. But the correct entry here should have been a payment of 315 should have been credit cash. Yeah, I'm repeating myself. Credit cash, debit, creditors. So you are not told anything about the creditor's account. So you assume the creditor's account is okay. The only problem is in nimepotelea wapi? Najikanganya. Anyone to help me? Anyway, so for this transaction, let me repeat. A payment of 315 made to a creditor. In this case, he ought to have credited cash or bank. Yeah, he ought to have credited cash or bank and then debit the creditor. So in this case, we are not told of what happened to cash account. So we assume that the cash account is okay. So the problem is in the purchases ledger. And you do remember in our first class, in our second class, we classified the ledger into 3 classes. We had the general ledger, we had the purchases ledger, and we had the sales ledger. So in the purchases ledger, if you remember, we said that this is where all the creditors' accounts are maintained. So in the purchases account is where the creditors' accounts are maintained. If you remember, or please refer to your notes. So the problem in this case is that this entry was not made in the creditor's account. The debit entry that should have been made in the creditor's account was not made. So this is a problem. So the next thing to ask ourselves is what type of error this is. Does this error affect the trial balance or not? To me, this error affects the trial balance because the debit entry that should have been made in the creditor's account has not been made, while the credit entry that was supposed to be made in the cash account has been made. So there is an issue on the debit side of the trial balance. It has a deficit of 315. So owing to this error, the trial balance will not balance because there was an entry made on the credit side that is in the cash book, and there is an entry that should have been made on the debit side in the creditor's account that was not made. So as such, there is a problem in the trial balance. So to correct for this, we introduce the suspense account. So we shall therefore correct this error as follows. So since the cash book is okay, the problem now is in the creditor's account. So it's correct for this by debiting what should have been debited in the creditor's account. So therefore we debit the creditor's account, and in our case in this question they are being referred to as the accounts payable. It is accounts payable. So this is the other name for creditors. The other name for creditors is accounts payable. And the other name for debtors is the accounts payable. The other name for debtors is the accounts receivable. So accounts payable is creditors. So we debit the accounts payable with what should have been debited, that is 315. And since this error affects the trial balance, we introduce the suspense account. So to balance this transaction off, we introduce the suspense account and credit the suspense account. with 315. With 315 shillings. So, and then you have the narration being correction of amount omitted from the creditor's account. So like that. So, any question? Sorry, Olote. And then close that. That is error number 2. Error number 2. We move on to the third error. That is a check of 188 received from the customer. From a customer had been correctly entered in the cash book but posted in the customer's account as 180. A check of 188 shillings received from a customer had been correctly entered in the cash book but posted in the customer's account as 180 shillings. So there's an error. So instead of posting 188 in the customer's account, instead of posting 188 in the customer's account, it was posted as 180. So there was an error. It posted less by 8 shillings. So we need to correct for this. But the question is, does this error affect the trial balance or not? Does this error affect the trial balance? So to me, it affects the trial balance because on one side of the ledger, the correct amount was entered, while on the other side, the wrong amount was entered. So in the cash book, 188 was entered. In the cash book, 188 shillings was debited. But in the customer's account, 180 shillings was credited, which was wrong. Tuko pamoja? So in the customer's account or in this account receivable account, instead of crediting 188, the accountant credited 180, which is less. So to correct for this, we add the underposting, that is 8 shillings. So to add this, it means we credit the customer's account with 8 shillings. Yeah. So you ought to have credited 188, but instead credited 180. So to correct for that, we add that credit, that less credit of 188, from 180 needs to be added to that credit entry. So as such, we credit accounts receivable account. So credit account receivable account. Credit the accounts receivable account by 8 shillings. And since this error affects the trial balance, we shall debit the suspense account. So we introduce the suspense account and debit. So therefore suspense account and debit 8 shillings in the suspense account. So and then you have the narration being being correction for amount maybe underposted in customer's account. And close that. And close that entry. Then we move on to the fourth error. We move on to the fourth error. The fourth error says what? We move on to the fourth error. The fourth error says that a purchase of fittings of 407 shillings had been included in the purchases account. A purchase of fittings of 407 had been included in the purchases account. So the correct entry here should have been debit purchases, debit the fittings account. So as you can see in our balance sheet, we have an account for furniture and fittings. So the correct account here, since this is an asset, a fixed asset that was purchased, he ought to have debited fittings account. That is the furniture and fittings account. But instead, he debited purchases account, which was wrong. So you need to correct for this. So the second issue here is, does this error affect the trial balance or not? So to me, this error does not affect the trial balance. So we shall therefore not introduce the suspense account in the correction of this error. So to correct for this, we shall debit the furniture and fittings account as it should have been debited, and then credit the purchases account to reverse that wrong entry. So therefore, debit furniture and fittings account, and then credit purchases account. So debit furniture and fittings, the amount is 407, and credit purchases account by 407. Then the narration being correction of error. So this error does not affect the trial balance. What type of error is this? This is an error of principle. Entered in the wrong account of a different class. So an error of principle. An error of principle. So being correction of error of principle. Then we proceed to the fifth error. The fifth error, that is the total of discounts allowed column in the cash book of 42 shillings. The total of discount allowed column in the cash book of 42 shillings had not been posted in the general ledger. So back to the classification of the ledger, we have the general ledger, the purchases ledger, and the sales ledger. So the entry here was not made in the general ledger, where we have the discount allowed account. So we are not told of what happened to the sales ledger, to the purchases ledger. Sorry, not the purchases, but the sales ledger. So we assume that the sales ledger is okay. The problem here is in the discount allowed account, which is in the general ledger. So this error affects the trial balance because the entry was made properly in the sales ledger, but was not made in the general ledger. He ought to have debited the discount allowed account and credited the customer's account. But in this case, we are not told of the customer's account, but we are told that the discount allowed account has a problem. So the customer's account is correctly credited. The discount allowed account has not been entered. So as such, the trial balance will be affected. The debit side will be less by 42 shillings. So the trial balance will therefore be affected, and therefore we need to introduce the suspense account. So to correct for this, we shall have to introduce the suspense account, and then we post this 42 in the discount allowed account. And to increase the discount allowed account, which is an expense, we are supposed to debit. So therefore, we debit the discount allowed account and then credit the suspense account. So therefore, debit the discount expenses. Whenever they increase, they're supposed to be debited. So this count allowed account was supposed to be debited with 42, but it was not debited. So therefore, to correct for this, we debit the omission. And then to balance this thing off, since it's affecting the child balance, we credit the suspense account with the amount of 42 shillings. Then we put the narration being correction of maybe a discount omitted. And we close that. Move on to the last error, number 6. That is a page on the sales day book was correctly totaled as shillings 765, but carried forward as 675. So you are told that in the sales account, there was a problem. Instead of recording 765, he records 675. He records the wrong figure, which is an error. So to correct for this, sorry. So to correct for this, we add the under posting. So you should have posted 765, but instead posted 675. So he posted a less amount. So to correct for this, we add the under posting, the difference, so as to revert to the correct amount. So the difference here is 765 minus 675, that is 90 shillings. So to correct for this, we add the 90 shillings to the sales account. So he had he credited, he was supposed to have credited 765, but instead credited 675. So to correct for this, we add 90 shillings on the credit side of the sales account. So you all understand that sales account, being a revenue, should be credited whenever it increases. So in this case, you have to have credited 765, but credited 675. So to correct for this, we add the difference to the credit side of the suspense account, of the sales account. So the other thing is whether this error affects the trial balance or not. To me, this error does affect the trial balance. So as such, we shall have to introduce the suspense account. So it affects the trial balance because the error is only in the sales account. We are not told of the other affected accounts, so we assume that the other account is okay. So therefore, we credit the sales account with a difference, that is 90 shillings. And to balance this entry off, we introduce the suspense account, which shall be debited by 90 shillings. So and then we close this by adding the narration that being correction for underposting in the sales account. Close that. And close that. And close that. Now we are through with the journal. The next step is to post these entries in the affected accounts. So you post these entries in the journal into the affected accounts. Then after doing that, now we prepare the balance sheet. So to post this in the affected accounts, we have the first account affected. From the first entry there is cash account and accounts receivable. So you open the two accounts. There is a cash account so you open the cash account, So you have the cash account. So as given in our balance sheet, we have cash in hand being, as you can see there, cash in hand being 836. So you need to correct for this. Cash account being 836. So this is a balance brought down. So balance. So cash should always have a debit balance. So balance brought down in the cash account. Balance brought down cash, which is 5,000 shillings. Another account is accounts receivable. Accounts receivable. So accounts receivable. Accounts receivable. From our balance sheet, accounts receivable, the amount is 34,517. Accounts receivable, the balance brought down is how much? 34,517. $34,517. So accounts receivable, you have seen the balance in the current assets being 34,517. 34,517. I had made a mistake in the cash account. The balance brought down for cash is 836, not 5,000. So to correct, we're still in our first error. We debit cash account 5,000, credit accounts receivable. So this we do that. So debit cash account. So that is by account receivable. Amount is 5,000. And then credit what? Credit accounts receivable by cash. Credit accounts receivable by cash. The amount being 5,000. Then the next entry, still debit cash account, credit accounts receivable. So debit cash account, the accounts receivable is 5,000. And debit account and credit accounts receivable by cash, the amount is 5,000. We move on to the next. Number 3, we have the suspense account and accounts receivable. So we open the suspense account. We open the suspense account. Open the suspense account. In the suspense account, as per our notes, we said we insert the difference in the trial balance. So our suspense account from our balance sheet has 259. That is the difference between the debit and the credit totals in the trial balance. 259. So we said that we add 250. So we said that the balance in the trial balance should be taken to the suspense account, and if the debit side is less, we debit that amount in the suspense account, and vice versa. That is, if the credit side is less, we credit that in the suspense account. So from what you can see in our balance sheet, the suspense account has been inserted under the current assets. Current assets which fall under the debit side of the trial balance. So which means that the debit side of this trial balance was less. So as such, we shall debit this 259 in the suspense account. So therefore debit 259. And in the description, we say balance as per the child balance. Balance as per the child balance. So we debit that. So still we are under the error number 3. So we have error number 3. Then we go to the error number 3. We debit suspense account. We credit accounts receivable account. So debit suspense account by account receivable. Debit suspense account by accounts receivable, 8 shillings. And credit accounts receivable by suspense account. Credit accounts receivable by suspense. I hope you're all there. Debit accounts receivable by credit accounts receivable by suspense account. Account receivable by suspense account. The amount is 8 shillings. We move on to the fourth. The fourth error, debit furniture and fittings, credit purchases account. So in this case, we open furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings account. We open furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings. So furniture and fittings in our balance sheet, the balance brought forward is 2,400. So being an asset, the balance brought forward will be on the debit side. So balance brought forward for asset. The amount to money 2,400, 2,400. And then we correct for this error. Debit furniture and fittings 402. So debit furniture and fittings, that is by purchases account. That is 407. 407. Then for purchases account, we shall skip it. This is an expense account. We don't have the account, the details of the account anywhere. So we have what we have in our question is a balance sheet only, and you all understand that the balance sheet doesn't have expenses and revenues. So you don't have the balance brought forward for purchases and other expenses. So as such, for purchases and other expenses and revenues, we shall not open the accounts here in the corrections. So what we shall do is that we shall prepare a statement of adjusted net profit where we shall put the purchases amount for correction. So as at now, we shall skip the purchase account correction. So you shall have this when doing the statement of adjusted net profit. So let's skip this and then move on to the error number 5 correction. So the error number 5 correction, we have the discount account and the suspense account. So the discount account is a revenue account which doesn't fall anywhere under the balance sheet. Discount is a revenue. Revenues don't fall anywhere under the balance sheet. So you don't have any details for the discount account as how much is the balance of the discount account. So the same case as we have done with the purchases account, we shall skip the discount account for now and have it in the statement of adjusted net profit. So we shall skip the discount account, being a revenue, we shall put it under the statement of adjusted net profit. So we skip it for now. So the only entry here shall be for the suspense account. So on the suspense account here, we shall credit by discount account. So therefore, credit suspense account here. Credit suspense account as per correction number 5. Credit suspense account by discount. This should have been discount allowed. Discount. It's discount what? A discount allowed, not discount received. So discount allowed. This should be discount allowed, not just discount account. So discount allowed. Discount allowed account. So discount allowed. So we credit the suspense account by discount allowed, that is 42 shillings. And then we move on to the last error correction. That is a suspense account, debit and credit sales account. Sales account being a revenue, it's not in our balance sheet, not details as concerning its balance in the balance sheet or in the equation. We shall also take it to the statement of adjusted net profit. So therefore, we shall not open an account for sales account. We shall skip it for now. So the only entry we shall make here is for the suspense account debit. So you debit the suspense account. Debit the suspense account. Debit the suspense account by sales of 90 shillings. Then I've just realized there's I had omitted, I skipped number 2. Why did I do it number 2? Error number 2, correction number 2, you're supposed to debit accounts receivable, payable, and credit accounts, suspense account. So I did not do that. So I need to correct for that. I had skipped that. So open the accounts payable account, debit 315, and credit suspense account. So credit suspense account by accounts payable. That is 315. And credit and debit accounts payable. So you don't have an accounts payable as yet. So we open one. Accounts payable. And debit. Sorry, accounts payable, we shall do what? According to what our journal says, accounts payable, we shall debit by suspense account. The amount is 315. So it shall then balance off these accounts. So after taking into consideration the correction of all these errors, we shall balance off these accounts. So we balance them off. So I hope you all understand the process of balancing off accounts. So to balance off, so 836 plus, so it's 1036. So cash account balance carried down is 10,836. We move on to the next. Accounts receivable, we balance off. So this, the total of the credit side is was there an error here? Accounts receivable balance brought down should be on the debit side. That was an error on my part. So to correct for this, this is an error, that was an error. So we balance this off. So the debit side is heavier. Did I do a mistake here? Debit suspense account. So yeah, so the balance, okay, the totals of the both side. Then you have the balance. Tuko pamoja kila mtu? Balance carried down, suspense account. It's 24,509. So that is a accounts receivable. Then balance of the suspense account. And the suspense account, the balance should be eliminated. So let's find the total of the two sides of the suspense account. So the debit total is 357. The credit total is 42 plus 315, which is 357. They are both equal, so correct. So the suspense account, there should be no balance after correcting for all the errors. Then we balance off the furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings. The balance carried down for furniture and fittings is 2807. I hope you can all see that. And the balance carried down for accounts payable is 315. So balance accounts payable is 315. So after having done this, the next thing is to do the statement of adjusted net profit. So statement of adjusted net profit. So statement of adjusted net profit. So here we have the net profit brought forward as shown in our balance sheet. And the net profit, as you can see in the balance sheet, here on the left side of the balance sheet, we have net profit of 52,287. So we adjust this profit with the errors that we have corrected. So the net profit is 52,287. So we have we have it as net profit brought down. The amount is 52. Pata ni ngapi? 52,287. 52,287. Then we add the expenses and the revenues that have been affected. So in our case, the expenses and revenues that have been affected are error number 1, there was no expense or revenue. We have, as per the correction of error number 4, error number 4, we have purchases is a revenue, is an expense which was affected, and in this case it decreased. So this will therefore should increase our net profit. So we should add increase. I hope you are together. So add decrease. So in this case, it's purchases that has decreased. So add decrease is decrease in expenses. So in this case, i.e. purchases, i.e. purchases. So and purchases has decreased by how much? As per our journal, the purchases has decreased by 407. Purchases has decreased by 407. so we less 47. Tuko pamoja? Add, sorry, no. We decrease in an expense will increase our net profit. So therefore we add decreases in expenses. Then number 5, we have discount allowed increasing. Increase in expenses will decrease our net profit. So therefore we less increase in expenses from our net profit. So less increase in expenses. In our case, that is i.e. discount allowed. Discount allowed, so less the decrease in increase in discount allowed is of 42 shillings. 42 shillings. Then the last item, sales account, which has increased. So increase in sales with being a revenue should increase the net profit. So as such, this increase in sales is supposed to be added to the net profit. So therefore add increase in sales. Add increase in sales, and the amount is 90. Then we shall then have, now after this, we shall have the adjusted net profit. Adjusted net profit. Which shall be equal to 52,287 plus 407 minus 42 plus 90, which is now 52,742 is now the adjusted net profit. So then the last item we have is a balance sheet. The last item we have is the balance sheet. So the balance sheet shall have it here. So now the corrected balance sheet as for the question, the balance sheet in here, 31st January 2003. 31st January 2003. So you copy our balance sheet. Let me copy. We bring this balance sheet here since we are using it. So the balance sheet so we copy it as it is, apart from some few figures that have changed. So the first item we have is capital as at 1st February 2002, which is equal to, so our capital has not changed. So as per the question, as per the errors, there was nothing affected the 40, 78, 45, and less drawings. Drawings also did not change. drawings also did not change. So there are no errors to do with drawing. So it still remains 19,500. Net profit, which is our net profit has changed. We have adjusted it to 52,742. So net profit has changed from 52,287 to, as you can see, to 52,742. So that's our net profit. So closing balance of capital in this case shall be that is opening capital plus minus drawings plus net profit. So our closing balance of capital is 41,087. Then you have our current liabilities. Current liabilities. In our case, we have accounts payable. Accounts payable. Oh, there was a mistake here. See now, in my case here, there is no balance carried down. So I need to correct for this. So accounts payable balance carried down in the accounts payable should have been accounts payable 6890. Let me correct this, 6890. Balance is so balance. So this is a balance brought down. Balance brought down. So balance carried down. Balance carried down. For accounts receivable should therefore be equal to 6890 minus 315. So 6575. So balance carried down is now equal to 6575. So we proceed to the other side of the balance sheet. The other side of the balance sheet, fixed assets. So fixed assets. The fixed assets, we have furniture and fittings, which is from our corrections. Furniture and fittings has changed to how much? 2807. So it's 2807. Where is furniture and fittings? 2807. Then move on to the next item, that is current assets. First one you have is inventory. Inventory doesn't change. No error. The other item is accounts receivable. Accounts receivable. That one has changed as per our corrections. Accounts receivable is now 24,509, as you can see there. Then we have next is cash in hand. cash in hand. The cash in hand amount also is supposed to change because there's a correction for that from 836 to 10,836. From 836 to 10,836. Then I don't think we have anything else. The suspense account balance has been eliminated, so we do away with that. So we add both sides of this of the balance sheet and see how much we have. Both sides of this, see how much we have. So should it balance it off without the suspense account? So the debit side, oh sorry, the liabilities and capital, the total is equal to 41,087 plus 6,575. The total on the credit side of the trial balance, sorry, no, the asset side should be, the current assets are how much in total? 9510 plus 24 plus 10. Then the total of all the assets is how much? Is equal to 2807 plus 44,855. So 47,662. So it has balanced off. So that is after balancing off all the errors. So and that is it for the correction of errors, unless there is a question. So I know you are tired. So any question? Ama tuendelee?
Excuse me, sir.
So that is it. Yes.
Can you get the
Excused.
whole? Yeah.
Then?
Can we
No,
get
I've not
the
heard
whole
you.
of the lesson in YouTube?
Oh yeah, it's being recorded. With your permission. Yeah, it can be. I can post it on YouTube.
Thank you. So I think I'll get more there because I was not. There are some places I was not getting well, but I'll get more there when I do it alone.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Me.
Yes.
So we'll be using Excel during exam.
You can use Excel. You can use Word. It's
Okay.
whichever is easy for you. For me, I prefer Excel.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Karibu. Mwingine? Latifa. Latifa,
Yes,
uko sawa?
niko sawa.
Sawa. Maxwell,
I don't have an issue.
sawa basi. When is the exam?
22nd.
22nd.
22nd. So we meet on 22nd. Hello. Tupatane on 22nd, si ndio? Sawa. So dismissed. So all the best in your exams. Let's meet on 22nd.
Them.
Okay.